Today we're going to talk about how to install a simple switch on the SKR version 1.4. Now keep in mind this only has two connectors. It has a red one and a black one. Now the red one's somewhat deceiving. It's not actually voltage in this case. It is actually for the signal pin, and the black will be for ground. So let me review what our end stops are, starting with our X minimum right here, then our our Y minimum, then our Z minimum. And inside these pins, they're set up as our 5-volt pin is on top right here. Then we have our middle pin, which is ground. And then the bottom pin in this connector is the signal pin. So you're concerned only with the ground pin and the signal pin. So I'm going to show you the connector here real quick. Then I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to bring it in to the X minimum and place it on those two pins. So as you can see, it's on the ground pin and the signal pin. So what we need to do to program this is we need to connect the big side of our USB serial cable right here to our board and the small side to our computer. You may hear a beep. And right now it's not powering, so I'm going to disconnect this right here for a moment. And I'm going to change the jumper pin so that we actually have power going in 5 volts. So what you're going to do is basically pop off the pin, and the bottom 2 pins in that row are for 5-volt connections via the USB cable. So I'm going to reconnect the big side to the board, and as you can see, it's now powered. So once again, I want to review the actual pins with you just to make it clear. We have our X end stop right here, which has 5 volts ground and then a signal pin. The same goes for our Y minimum and our Z minimum as well for 5 volts ground and signal. So what we need to do is go over to our web browser for a moment and type marlinfw.org and press enter. Then go to the download tab, and as you can see, there are several different builds here. We can only use the one for 32-bit, which would be the 2.0 version. And so what I'm going to do is use the nightly bug fix by clicking right here. So this is going to download, and while this is downloading, what we're going to do is first go to the folder to see where it is, which is in our downloads folder, and right click and click on extract all, and now we're going to press the extract button. So what this is doing is extracting our build. So let me explain that no one is paying me or sponsoring me to do this tutorial, and I purchased all the equipment with my own money. But I will be placing Amazon affiliate links in the description for your convenience. So once this finishes downloading, what we're going to need to do is go over to VS Code. And VS Code has a plugin for Platform IO, which allows us to set up our environment. So it's almost there. So I'm going to move over to Visual Studios in a second and open it up. So inside VS Code, what we have is our environment as it hopefully will be configured. And what we need to do is go over to our source folder, then our core folder, then boards.h. Inside boards.h, what we need to do is we need to search on the SKR. So we're going to do a Control F, type SKR _14 and see if we can find it. So what we have here is actually our board, which is the Big Tree Tech SKR version 1.4. Now keep in mind that there are two versions of this board. There's the regular board that they supply, and there's a turbo version. The difference between the two is that the processors are different. So in this case, what we need to do is search on this one. So we're going to copy it for now, and I'm going to show you where the other one is located. It's actually down here. If you were using the turbo version, you'd copy this instead. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to close out of this folder, close out of boards.h, and go to configuration.h. Inside configuration.h, I'm going to go to the top of the file, and I'm going to do a search on motherboard. And as you can see, the current board specified is board_ramps_14. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and paste what we just copied. Then we're going to scroll up and we're going to change the serial port to -1. And then I'm going to show you the end stops. So I'm going to do a Control F and search on end stop as one word. And as you can see, it specifies what to use for the X minimum, the Y minimum, and the Z minimum. Keep that in mind because that's what's specified for the board currently with the pinouts. So we can't really use these maximums unless we make some changes to our pins file. So we're going to skip talking about that because it's not relevant at the moment. And then end stop pull-ups, because we're using a simple switch end stop that creates a circuit, we do not need to worry about pull-ups because there's no capacitor or resistors on the board. The same goes for the end stop pull downs. But down here, sometimes you may need to change the logic of your end stop. For instance, if we're checking to see what the status of the end stop is in Pronterface with the G code M119, if it says, for instance, when we do that it's triggered, but we want it to be open, we would change the false to a true to reverse the logic. But seeing how we don't have to worry about that for this end stop, I'm going to go directly to platformio.ini, and we need to set up our default environment. Right now it's set for the Mega 2560 chipset, so we need to change that to our chipset. So we're going to do a search on SKR_14 and see if we can find it. Apparently we can't, so we're going to scroll down through the file and see what we can find. So it may take a moment. So apparently we're not finding it very quick here, but I know a shortcut. So I'm going to go over to Source. Then I'm going to go to Core. And I'm going to find the Pins folder. Now I know it's a unique board chipset, so I'm going to search through each one of these. Now obviously it's not here. So we're going to go up and look at the LPC 1769. And as you can see, there is no board here as well. So what we're going to do next is go to the LPC 1768. And as you can see, they have a Big Tree Tech SKR V1.4. So we know it's going to be the LPC 1768 for the chipset. We're going to scroll up and we're going to go to the Mega 2560 and change that to capital LPC 1768. And that's our chipset. So we can search on that just to confirm by copying it and then doing a Control F and seeing where it is. And so it's saying that we have an ARM Cortex. Let's see if there's any other instances. So apparently we can't confirm much. That's okay, but we know it's in this folder, so we're all good. So what we need to do next is we need to build this. Now there's a couple of ways to build this. One, you can click on the checkbox, which will then build or compile your source code changes. But in this case, we can connect to it via the USB. So we're going to click the upload button, which will build or compile for us, then upload directly to our board. So we're going to click on that. And this may take a few moments. Okay, now that the build is completed, we can check on it to see if it's successful, which it appears to be. So that's good. Now, the other thing we can do is we can go over to our micro SD drive that shows up via the USB connection for Serial. And you can see that the old version is 2.8 or the 8th of February. And then the new version that we just compiled, being firmware.bin for the binary, is today on the 1st. So in order to load this, what we need to do is we need to remove the USB connection. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the actual connection for USB so it disappears. And then I'm going to reconnect in order to allow it to load. So this may take a second, but it'll pop back up. And we'll know if it's successful because now it's updated to just firmware. So now that we actually want to test it, what we need to do is open up Pronterface. So I'm going to go over to my desktop in my print run directory and click on Pronterface. Inside Pronterface, I'm going to connect to the SKR version 1.4. As you can see, it said connecting, and now it says printer is now online. So I'm going to type M119 and press enter. And as you can see, the X minimum says open. So to test this, what we're going to do is we're going to actually actuate it with my finger and press enter again on the send command. And as you can see, it now says triggered. So now I'm going to let my finger go. And I'm going to type M119 again and press enter. And it says open. So if you like my tutorial, please press the like button and subscribe. And thank you for your time.